stagger is only for 10 spots, so we'd have to adjust that to the 11. But the other is, I was curious if the 1-year spots and the 2-year spots, when those seats are up, would they then be reappointed or a new seat for 3 years, or would it remain that it's 1 2-year spots and 3-year spots?
No, well, my view is that
That's the way we do it on other committees. It's just starting out so that we get them staggered, and then they all are reappointed.
Otherwise, in year 6, they'd all be up. So, as far as appointing a chair, vice chair, I think it might be premature to do so before the committee has met and discussed, kind of come together. We haven't discussed with the applicants whether, they didn't know to apply to be chair or to present themselves in that way. And I think it might be good to allow this committee to come together and discuss among themselves what they want from leadership and how they'd like to proceed.
Any other member of the council want to be heard on that?
I agree on the staggered terms and the way that was sketched out. As far as the chair, that may be the point, and I could see us relinquishing that authority over time. I question whether there would be a disadvantage in not having someone who was truly coordinating the discussion, which is what the chair's function would be, to get the committee started. And so I would just raise that as one thing. If you go into a brand new committee with brand new people without some level of guidance from someone whose job is to organize the agenda and guide the discussion, that could be less productive. And so that would be my concern with not appointing a chair, at least to begin that process. I could certainly see relinquishing that power over time at some point.
I would agree with Councilor Castell on that in terms of relinquishing the power. I don't think it's the chair position is something we should continue to appoint. They should be self-governing body, but I think to get everybody going and as a liaison, as co-liaison for the committee, I think it would be helpful to have some sort of leadership. Also, I noticed we have a lot of absences of people who've applied. And so I believe we will not be completely filling the committee until September, in which case I think we don't want to wait another month to then have them take action and move forward. So I would be in support of the staggered as well as the appointment.
Okay. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Just to say one thing to that, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but on the next agenda item, I just encourage the applicants to indicate if that's something they'd even be interested in, because being a chair of a committee is a significant amount of work. Being a vice chair, which is also noted here, is a significant amount of work. So that would be helpful if folks, even at the outset, could at least identify that. Not prejudicing anybody who is not interested in being a chair, because it's not a role for everyone. People want to volunteer in all sorts of ways.
Mr. President,
Yes.
if I could just ask the council, it's very difficult to hear with the fans going in the room and with those that are masked. So if you could pay particular attention to get really close to your mic when you speak.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure, and I will project. Jacob, please go ahead.
So if we will be appointing a chair, if we could appoint it to a 1-year term, so that then after a year, the committee itself can elect their chair. I could support that.
Council members?
I would support that. I think that makes sense, especially if we have reappointments taking place after a year.
So I would just recommend that it's fine to set up a schedule to do it, but 1 year is going to disappear very quickly. So I would suggest that we do 2 years chair. That's my view. So we get Rob, please go ahead.
one additional thought on that is, if the council were to appoint a chair tonight, one thing that might be good for the committee itself is to create some sort of bylaws in terms of what its goals and procedures are, and that could be included within the bylaws. I agree, 1 year does sound too short if there was a chair for 2 years, but I'd almost propose that we leave it up to the committee to make that determination, and perhaps further discussion, and if they vote to make it 2 years and they vote to make it 2 years or whatever it might be.
Okay. Anyone else on that? So I'm going to make a motion on the staggered terms so that we can kind of get through that. Mary, it'll be based on the town manager's comment. I recommend that we have 4 members appointed to a 3-year term expiring on July 31, 2024. That we have 3 members appointed to a 2-year term expiring July 31, 2023. And that we have 4 members appointed to a 1-year term expiring July 31, 2022. I also recommend that, I also make a motion that that the chair and vice chair be in the 3-year term periods, be selected from that group. That's my motion.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded. Further discussion.
I have a question. I support the motion. I have a question just about alternates, given that there are 2 alternates. I would propose that the alternates be within the 2-year term so that if they're on the committee for a year, they don't miss their opportunity to become a full member by virtue of being an alternate. But I'm not sold on that. I'm raising it for discussion that we give consideration to what the alternate does.
Sure. So for folks who don't know, we create alternate positions. Those folks participate in all debates and all discussions, but they don't vote unless there is a member missing. So we'll have a first alternate. If one person on the committee is missing, that first alternate is able to vote. If 2 people are missing, 2 of the full members are missing, then both alternates will be able to vote. So that's why we do that. It helps with making sure that we have quorum when sometimes that's hard to do. So you're suggesting that they be placed in the 2-year terms?
I'm not suggesting it for purposes of the motion. I'm suggesting it for discussion because I want to see what other folks think in terms of how the treatment of the alternates. I raised 2 years only just to give those folks an opportunity. Again, I'm not sold on that. A year also makes sense because they will come up for another interview a year later. So more just for discussion purposes, I want to see what people think about the 2 versus 1 year, or even the 3-year term.
Anyone have any thoughts on that?
I like the idea of an extended term for an alternate. I think you want to make them, I think the difficulty with being an alternate is always that you don't always know how, you don't feel like you don't do so. If you have a longer tenure, I think you're more invested. And I think that makes sense.
Okay. Well, if you want to move that as an amendment to my motion, I will accept that amendment. That is that the alternates would be among those members appointed to 2-year terms in the first instance, and then it would turn into 3-year terms thereafter. Do you accept that as a?
Absolutely, second, yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion? Mary, do you have that? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Okay, next motion, I'll make a motion that that the town council appoint the chair and vice chair of the DEI committee for a 1-year term for the first one-year term.
Clarify that that would not necessarily be, the council may conclude that it needs another half a year. I mean, that wouldn't be necessarily exclusively